little deeper. So, Angelina and I were both born in 1989. She was born 4 months after me. I was born on February 13th. She was born in June 8th. And let me see. So this 4 month period between our births is actually an important thing that occurs throughout our entire lifetimes. And so we are equal and opposite in every aspect of our lives, every area of ourselves. She grew up being kind of more, I guess say spoiled to some extent, and just more materially wealthy and what have you, and yeah, and so she was kind of more she was more privileged than I was growing up, but she was still a good person. She was still a good kid. Like, she wasn't really so much of a brat necessarily, and so and growing up in school, as far as school goes, when she was a kid, she was in elementary school. She was, didn't want to do her homework and whatever else. She just wanted to go home and, just slack off in whatever different ways and stuff like that. But it was later on when she got into high school that she really started, being, on a roll, or at least getting A's and B's and just passing, and was more involved also. And so I was actually basically the opposite of that, where we always meet in the middle at some point, where I was less privileged, but really not really, because just like I was saying, she was privileged, but she's not like she was rich or anything like that. But for me, I was less privileged, but we weren't like completely just broke or anything like that. We still had stuff, toys and video game systems and stuff like that. But again, I was more of a brat than I really should have been, growing up that way. But at the same time, I was still humble, and still humble, or at least I became humble, or recognized that I was humble at the same time. And so there's kind of a balance of those two going on with both of us. And but for me in school, I was really very good in kindergarten through 5th, and then 6th grade it just went downhill. And she got her first A. She started to pass, not her first A, but she started to pass, and in 6th grade. And so, let me see. So, she was born in Spain in 1989. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States. And so, there's a whole dynamic where, the places that we are born in, the places we live in, and the places we move, the directions, the actual cardinal directions that we move in, and the length of time that we stay in these places, all coincide. There's a twin flame thing, equal opposite, and mathematical equation that happens with that. And so she goes after 1 year she's born, and then 1 year later she moves. Her family moves to Texas, and she stays there until I don't know. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot going on. I know there's a lot more going on, and there's a lot more to know. Because I channeled most of this or all of this information, and like the really detailed details I don't know, and I haven't channeled yet. So I'm kind of giving these generalizations right now. I'm not going to be able to do what I really want to do is really go and really kind of prove, in a sense, all the things that I'm saying. But I'm really just going to have to kind of let you go off of faith of what I'm saying. And so she lives there until, well, she continues living there, and when I'm 4, so this is 4 years later, or 3 years later after that, I moved to Georgia. And so, like I was saying, there's a 4-month thing that happens, that keeps appearing in our lives. And then there is a 3-year thing that occurs with us. And so So 3 years later, after she moves to Texas, I moved to Georgia, and I moved to a city called Woodstock in Georgia. And I wish I knew where she lived in Texas, so I can give you all the details about how this thing is working. But I'm gonna kind of skip because I move around a lot while I live in Georgia, and I'm sure she's moving around or doing something that's coinciding with what I'm doing as I'm moving on. So I'm sure that she's moving around. She's doing something that's coinciding with what I'm doing. While I'm moving around and doing these different things, so I'm just gonna skip to when I'm going through a crossing point in my life. It's kind of an inner, turmoil kind of period where it's just a period where there's just change occurring in my life, and there's obviously for her the same thing's happening. And this is when she has moved to Georgia, and she and I are 20 years old. And actually, let me think about this. Is she 19 still or 20? Because she's 4 months younger. So let me see. Well, I'm 20 years old, and she very well may have been 19. Oh no, she was definitely 19, and so she was 19 at the time. And but anyways, regardless, she has moved to Georgia at this time, and I was living in Marietta, Georgia. She was living in Smyrna, Georgia, which are adjacent cities, and I had gotten a car and I was driving around. I think I was looking for a job, and I had visited Smyrna for a brief second, and I stopped at a gas station, and I got out of the car and went inside this gas station into the store, and paid for the gas. And as I was coming out, she actually, my higher self and my guys told me way later, actually this year or last year. I don't know if it was this year or last year. I think it was. I don't know. I don't even remember. But it was fairly recently. Told me that we actually crossed paths. She actually walked into the store as I came out of the store, and it's just like one of those things where she just crossed my peripheral vision, so that I didn't even see her at all. And And so you know, this is kind of just like a meeting, a smaller representation of the meeting that will occur soon, later on, and it is a culmination point for both of us, where our lives kind of changed at that time. After that time, and there's all this stuff that goes on with our lives on Earth, with the relationships between us and other people in Twin Flames as well, where you know she's always ahead of me in certain areas, and I'm always ahead of her in certain areas, and then we crisscross at certain points, and it's paradoxical, so that it's always happening, so that we're always equal. We're always ahead and always behind each other, all at the same time, and so it gets really confusing to try to explain. But it would be way easier to see if I had like diagrams or something like that. But so for her, but having for me, I'm going through an inner transition, and she's in the process of going through a material transition, but at the same time, she's in the process of going through an inner transition, and I'm going through a material transition as well. So we're both going through that at the same time, and but for me, I guess it's kind of like the inner is more substantial, and so in a way, and so very soon after that, I end up moving to. I'm going through all this inner crap, and I mean, it's just I'm kind of becoming more conscious without even knowing it, and just going through that kind of shadow that you get to before you have a recognition or realization, self-realization. And I moved back into in Kennesaw, Georgia, with my mom, and which is interestingly away from Marietta. It's to the east of Marietta. It's actually kind of to the northeast of Marietta, and she moves from her mom's to to Atlanta, which is the southwest from Smyrna. And so it's interesting because if you were to look at it, I gotta go on here. So I'm going to show you a diagram of the map that these cities are on and how we move. I gotta get it. Okay. So it's kind of like a diagonal line, a little bit. And, you know, you have Smyrna being here, Marietta kind of being, you know, here, Kennesaw here, and Atlanta here, and so, you know, she's here and I'm here, and then we, you know, and then we move apart. So she goes down here and I got her here, so it's equal, it's opposite. Let's see what happens. To Atlanta, and so so there's this 4 month thing that's happening, and then you know, we end up in the same place, and then there's like a thing that later happens where we're there in these places in Atlanta for 3 years, and then let's see, I moved 4 months after her, so she moves out of her mom's, or out of her own apartment, back with her mom, and then 4 months later is when I moved out of my dad's. And so so she moved you know, with her mom. Well, now I gotta get into that later. But so let's see. So what happened is, like I said, 4 months later I moved. She moved into her own apartment, and then 4 months later I moved into my dad's. Hold on 1 second. So interestingly, I was living before. Let's see. Yeah, I lived on my own as a teenager, and then moved back in with my parents, and she was with her parents, and then moved back and moved out on her own. And so we were there for 3 years, and then 4 months before I moved out, she moved out. Back to her mother's, but I was in my father's house, and so after that 4 month period, I moved out on my own, and it's a little bit more that goes into that, but ultimately I'm on my own. I'm on my own now. This is really still that period, and eventually we'll be together. We'll actually be living together. I don't really know what's gonna happen after that, though. After we meet, I don't know what's gonna go on, but we'll see. So, anyways, there's just this crisscrossing and whatever else that's occurring, and you know, there's even goes down to, you know, for the 3 month period, that 3 year period that she was here, she was, well, I would say 2 of the 3 years, or actually 4 years. So for 3 of the 4 years, she was, you know, on her just earthly journey, just out, you know, doing her thing, making money and doing her art, making music and painting and whatever else that she does artistically, making money off of that and working and just really on her earthly journey. And I was just completely in my spiritual journey. You know, she's a more earthly based person, where, you know, she's got experience traveling and just going to different places. It has a life basically, and gets out more. And I am just me, and just always inside in my body, in my brain, and in my spirit all the time. And I basically have been that way for the last 4 years. And so then this kind of next level kind of period starts to occur for both of us, where well, she just begins her spiritual journey, and this was a year and a half ago. So she just begins, you know, kind of waking up spiritually, and then she's kind of taken up by God, and which is just something that's being added on to my understanding of what's been happening with me for the last year and a half. It's kind of funny to say it like that, because we've been going through just the most intense kind of thing. Well, you have to watch my other videos to understand. I actually took them down, so I'm gonna have to redo those videos about what's happening with me, what I call the diasporic period, or the Twin Flame School. I've been calling it the Twin Flame School this whole time. That's not actually what it is. And I guess it is in a way for me, to some extent, but it's a lot more than that too. And so basically, I guess I'll just give you the story. God, it's crazy to say it, but the actual source itself, because higher beings influence human beings as far as guidance goes, on different levels, and in other ways too. There's different details about how the higher beings interact with human beings all through history and even today. And the source itself comes to me and takes over my kind of hijacks my consciousness in a way that it kind of brings me through this kind of schooling period, very, very intense and challenging schooling period that I'm still in now. And it's just overall it's a negative thing, so it'd be kind of like the masculine side, and then God does the same thing to her on her side, but what it does is overrides your vibration and overrides your reality, so that it's basically your reality is no longer your reality, so that what you're putting out and doing and the way you feel and are is being reflected to you, but it's just whatever the source is intending through you, that's what your reality is. And so it does the same thing with her, but it takes her to a higher level, the feminine side, and does the equal opposite thing on her side. And so that's where she is now, and that's where we've been for the last few years. And in her world, though, she still has the ability to be material, in a sense, and she's just getting all the perks of being in this very light and loving, very just generous and awesome world, where she can just enjoy herself in that sense and grow spiritually at the same time, just from being on a spiritual journey and being around these loving beings and being with the source in that higher sense. And then there's other things that go on too. And then for me, I'm experiencing basically the complete opposite of that, where I'm growing still intensely spiritually like I was before, but I get to kind of experience the world or go out in the world, but the opposite, because basically what happened, let's see, I don't know, I guess I just started interacting with people a little bit more, and blah blah blah, and then later on I was like homeless, and so I was kind of really just out there, having to get up and walk and just get my life together, get a job, and do basically everything, basically start from square one, trying to get my earthly life in order, because I focused on spiritual so much. I didn't have anything. I was basically having to be sustained by other people, my parents and my dad in particular, and my good friends, for money and groceries and whatever else, because I was so inner that I didn't have any stability or foundation as far as the earth goes. And so I went through that, and I'm still going through that to some extent. So there's equal opposite going in every single aspect of our lives. And so, like I was saying, let's go back a little bit, because I kind of skipped over things. When we were living in these buildings, when we moved to Atlanta, I lived in a place called the Mattress Factory Lofts with my father, and she was living on her own in a place called the Stacks, which is a loft building, and they're right by each other. They're actually, I didn't know that she was there until later on, but and so after over 3 years of living there, and then my guys told me that she was there, but there was kind of this, well, I was just told that I couldn't go see her yet. So these buildings are interesting, because we end up living in buildings that are perfectly representing ourselves. And so her building, the Stacks, is like this kind of upper scale, upper middle class kind of place. It's more expensive than the Mattress Factory. It's more expensive looking than the Mattress Factory. It's very well maintained, beautiful red brick building. That is, the landscape is all well mannered, well maintained. You have, like, if you just look at the structure, it's just majestic looking. It's a nice looking building, and it has these huge smokestacks that just make it look like a palace almost. kind of, in a sense, and like a modern kind of down to earth kind of palace place, and but you know, at the same time, and that's like a, well, like I was saying, the way she grew up, it's a representation of a side of her. But at the same time, there is this, you know, really down to earth kind of environment that goes on in these in what they call lofts, which are usually very artistically oriented places. And so there is that side of it as well, but it's more upscale and less of the down to earth side. And then you know, there is the artistic environment that you know represents the artistic side of her, which she is an artist, and so in more than one way. And in my building is my very humble kind of palace, where, you know, both of these places are pretty popular locations in Atlanta, and they're right outside of downtown, and you know, it's a smaller building. It's not nearly as well constructed. It's a place that's both of the buildings are actually made out of old factories, and the building's like over 100 years old, and it was a mattress factory at one time, and it's still, you know, it's much more kind of just, I don't want to say run down, but it's a good balance between just a kind of nice. It's just a good balance of being nice and not so nice, and it's a down to earth place as well, and so it has that balance of being kind of nice in some ways, and in others it's just very, I don't know, urban kind of thing that's going on, and so one of the things is that, you know, it extends beyond the buildings themselves. You know, for me, being the more, I guess. Oh, I forgot to say that the Match Factory is a very artistically oriented place too, and it does. And I'm an artist as well, and it does represent me very well. The way that I grew up, you know, humbler, you know, growing up, and just everything about my life was kind of represented in that building. And so, let me see. So, and then it even extends out farther. If you go to the top of my building or her building, you can look either way, and you can see the other building. And you know, it's, you know, one building here, then the other here, and then in between is this, you know, this large cemetery that's in the middle, and then right in front of that is a train track. The transit, they call it the MARTA in Atlanta. The MARTA train track transit station, and then right beside that is the freight transit system, or freight train, or the freight railway, and so it's just like there's this barrier that's there in front of us, and then the cemetery and kind of the train track too is this barrier that's in between our palaces, and so so it kind of separates us, just like how we're separated from each other. And then, you know, if you look over to the east or to the west of my building, it's you know, this downtown is right there, and we're closer to downtown on my side, which is more of me. It's more you know, representing just us growing up as we're not really ghetto, but we kind of are at the same time. Really just, I don't know what word to use, but we're just kind of really down to earth people, me and my family, and just have a good balance of that. And so when so you have downtown over there, and then to the east, and then to the west on her side you have a place that's called Emmon Park, which her building is closer to that side of Atlanta. And so Emmon Park is kind of like the upper scale side of the city, or rather than saying upper scale, it's kind of like just the side that represents her. It's different, obviously, than downtown, and it's houses instead, and it's going to be kind of middle class, just regular middle class people, and then that. So there's that, and then if you actually go around the back side of both of our buildings, like we're just outside of downtown. I'm closer. She's a little bit farther, just a little bit farther. But around the other side of us, where our buildings are actually really located, is called Grant Park, and so we're kind of like downtown / Grant Park in a sense, but which is more upper scale, but it's I guess it would say it's upper middle class, and so we have these two buildings that represent us, and these two locations that are near us that represent us, and then Grant Park is where you would have just the average kind of person that's not even close to poverty or anything like that, and that represents not quite where we are or how we grew up, but what we can easily become, and what we, in a sense, deserve. It represents kind of a side of ourselves that's kind of in the back of our minds, that's it's kind of there inside of us, where we could easily blend in with those people because we are good people. I'm not to say that people in other places are not good people, but we are good people, and we're smart people. We we're intellectuals. We're not in the crimes and whatever else, anything like that. So our whole area is representing us, and we fit in really anywhere pretty much. And so we get this whole thing where this is kind of what we deserve or where we could be, and we can fit in there, but we're more in the forefront, where the action is, where things are actually happening over in downtown, where where the streets are, in the streets, where all these different people are just walking around in the streets, and things are actually happening. And if you go over to Emmon Park, it's basically the equal opposite of that, where you have 5 Points over in Atlanta, and you probably don't know what I'm talking about if you don't live in Atlanta. But 5 Points is like it's just a very busy, kind of pretty popular side of in Atlanta. So like everyone knows 5 Points, and then over in Emmon Park is Little 5 Points, which is kind of, you're gonna find way more black people in Little 5 Points, and in 5 Points, and you're gonna find way more white people in 5 Points. But they're both kind of hip kind of places, and that are very well known, and so that is just a perfect representation of the kind of people we are, on different levels. but our actual locations, because these places that are off to the side and behind us, are representing where they would be in our minds and inside of us, inside of ourselves, and our behavior. And you know, because I do have a past of just being very. I mean, I have a criminal past, and I have a very kind of rough, kind of minded, you know, trying to be a thug and all that kind of stuff past. And you know, I don't know what goes on with Angelina in her mind and whatever else she has going on. So I really can't judge how these kind of areas would coincide with what's going on with her. But you know, like I said, I have basically my whole environment is you know, represented within myself, and you know, the actual locations are actually more us than any of these surrounding areas. And so, you know, then it goes down to everything about our lives. Like, for example, we're both artists. We both sing and we both dance, but she paints, and she paints and she does poetry. I don't paint, but I do poetry. And what I know there's equal opposite thing there, where she is. Oh, I remember now. I remember one part is that she is already very well trained in what she does. She's already, you know, been on stage and traveled and performed on stage and things like that. She has already you know, had choreographed performances and whatever else that she's done, and recorded songs and things like that, and has this, or at least, you know, has been in studios and stuff like that regularly. I've been to studios, but not really, not truly, really. But you know, I've been on stage too, but it's just kind of like little local open mics and stuff like that. And so basically what I'm saying, she's more well established in that area, and I'm not, and but we're both artists, and let me see. Okay, that's what it was. She's a painter. We're both writers, and that's what it is. Okay, I got it now. So we're both writers and we're both painters, but I just started painting. I barely know how to do it, and I've barely done it. She just started painting, and she just started writing, and so that's, you know, how it's equal and opposite. I'm a pretty well established writer, although as far as just the writing itself, but not you know, having anything published or anything like that. But she on her side of it, my artistry is just, you know, all just here. It's just basically, you know, put away, and I just have hella art that's just sitting there, and hers is actually doing something. It's actually circulating in the world. You know, she's actually sold art in different places and stuff like that. So you know, she's more established in the world, even as far as her art goes, and I'm more established, or I'm far less established that way, and so yeah, that's basically it. As far as I know. I mean, I know that, well, there's a lot more actually now that I think about it, because it goes to the, you know, the planet that she was incarnated on before she came incarnated on the earth, and just a whole huge story that goes with that coincides with me on the earth, and us on the earth, and our families on the earth too. So it's just a huge thing that goes along with that, and the earth and another planet being kind of twin flame, in our solar system, and their solar system being twin flame star systems and stuff like that. So anyways, that's just basically what I wanted to say. I'm sorry for, all the just kind of discombobulation and whatever else that's been going on during the video. But I hope that you got something out of it, and I hope that you enjoyed it to at least some extent. And I hope that your journey is well, regardless of if your twin flame is here or not. And just enjoy your lives. Much love to you, and I do very much so appreciate